Hello and welcome to another video. I just filmed my TBR video for August and it is absolutely boiling in this flat, so I'm putting my hair up to film this next bit, and I'm also gonna get my bottle of iced water. I've started putting this old juice bottle in the freezer overnight, and then for the rest of the day it just melts, and I keep like refilling it with water and you just get instant cold water because it's got a giant block of ice in it. Sorry if that's really distracting. But what I'm going to do now is I'm going to recap you on some of the books I've read recently that I haven't told you about, that I want to tell you about. And if you are watching this video, then it has succeeded, because I'm going to do this with no script and no preparation. It's going to be chaos. So hello and welcome to another video. I thought that I would actually just crack on straight after my last TBR video and just talk to you about some of the books that I have read recently. This will not be scripted. I have done no preparation. I have just opened on my iPad. I have just opened Storygraph so I can tell you about some books, and there'll be a few edits while I look down and go, did I read that? I don't remember that. What did I think about it? What was it even about? And I will put images up here, and I'll put some timestamps to kind of help you through this. But I feel like whenever I have to take a bit of time off from YouTube, sometimes I pressure myself to get back to it quickly. And sometimes I pressure myself to, I must catch up and I must make sure that I tell you about everything that's gone on and everything that I've read. And then I have to think about it and script it, and it just becomes a really big thing. And I think that kind of comes across in the videos as well, that I'm getting stressed or that I'm not enjoying this, and I don't think it's then fun to watch. So I hope that this is okay. I'm sure you'll let me know in the comments, but I hope it's okay that actually I'm not going to prepare any of my thoughts. I'm just going to sit down and have a little chat with you about some of the books that I read and what I thought of them. The only book that I'm going to mention as a DNF, I actually haven't DNF'd that many books this year, and I think all the ones that I have DNF'd I've already spoken about. I'm looking at my list and I'm pretty sure I've already mentioned them, so let's not go over old ground. The only one is definitely one that I've mentioned on this video, lots of people were interested in my thoughts, was Murder Before Evensong by the Reverend Richard Coles. I think I got less than 50 pages. No, I got to 50 pages, because my rule is always get to 50 pages, because within 50 pages you can probably tell if it's a good book, and it's not. So I DNF'd it. There are other books that I've read recently which I should have DNF'd, but at 50 pages I mean. But yeah, so Murder Before Evensong, it was his first book. I read it because I think it was for the Bristol Book Bingo. I think it was for my library book bingo that I read it. And I can't remember what prompt it was, but I think it was for a prompt for like a genre that you don't normally read, and I don't normally read crime fiction. I've got a different book which is also crime for that, but not one of his. I'm trying to remember exactly what I hated about it, but I did hate it. And I don't think it was because it's not a genre that I normally read, because I feel like it would be fair if I just thought, it's okay. I just found it really insufferable and really long-winded, and like nothing happened in the first 50 pages, which is what I normally like a book where nothing happens, but I feel like in a crime novel things should happen. It was supposed to be set in the 80s, but I feel like there were a few things that were quite dated in terms of some of the language that he used, which I did not appreciate, and I just thought it was really badly written. There's no other way of describing it. I just really didn't like it. I thought it was really badly written. I don't know if his writing improves, but I thought, I'm so baffled by the number of like quotes that were all over it about what a wonderful, hilarious, brilliant book it was. I didn't find it funny. I didn't find it engaging. I didn't find it interesting. Wow, I really didn't like it, did I? There's another book which I'm about to mention that I also hated, but I finished that one. So back in May, I read The South by Collins Bean, and this was his first novel, and it's one of my plans to read through his novels so that I've ticked everything off. So I just went back to the start. I don't know if I'm going to read them all in publication order, which I do tend to like doing, but because I've read quite a few sort of interspersed throughout, which some of them I want to reread, some of them I probably don't. But I certainly want to tick all of them off. So I went back to the start and I read The South. Now, The South is about a woman who has left her husband, or she leaves her husband in Ireland, and for no real reason. Like, it's not, what I mean is that it's not like she's fleeing violence or she's fleeing adultery or that she's having an affair or he's, it's not like something has happened. It reminded me, or it made me think actually, that a lot of Comte Bean's novels are about people who seem to have no agency, whilst also doing things, while things happen and things progress. But sometimes it feels like things just happen to these characters. And this character, I think the character's main name is Catherine, and she is sort of determined to be an artist. She really wants to, basically she wants to not be married. She wants to not have this really boring pedestrian life with her husband and a child, and she just leaves. And like I said, it has this kind of, this style that I now know that Comte Bean's novels have, where people just seem to let things happen to them, and things happen, and they're very not plot-based novels, and this one definitely isn't. I did really enjoy this, but I didn't love it as much as I loved some of his other novels. I'm still going to obviously read my way through them, but it was an interesting read. I think it was a great, I was going to say it was a great character study, but actually it's a great character study of someone that you don't quite get under the skin of and you don't quite understand. I feel like he didn't quite scratch the surface. He has this writing style that is very, I want to say vague, but whilst also being quite penetrating, getting really under the skin of the character. So it seems like you're not really finding anything out, but actually you really are, and you realise by the end of the novel that you found out quite a few details. With this one, I feel like he just kind of scratched the surface, and I feel like I wasn't really getting anything else. So I don't think he quite got there with this, but I did really enjoy the experience reading it. I'm quite happy that I read it. Will be continuing my read of Comte Bean's novels. The next book that I read was for the TBR reading spot, and that was The Dressmaker by Beryl Bainbridge. This, I'm going to get the book, hang on. It's still over here in a pile that I'm going to give to a charity shop. I found my pile of books. I thought I got rid of all of these already, but I haven't. So this is the cover of it, and I thought it was quite dark, quite sinister. I think it was for a prompt, which was, I should be able to remember the prompts. This is my own read along. Something to do with a creepy book, or a scary book, or a horror, that was it. So this book doesn't tell you on the front what it's about, it doesn't tell you on the back what it's about, it doesn't tell you anywhere inside. And I picked this up purely because it was Beryl Bainbridge and I'd never read any. But when it was described as sort of horror, claustrophobic, I thought, okay, I'm intrigued by that. And the cover, as you can see, is quite creepy. So I was very intrigued as to what this might be like. It is set in Liverpool, and it was written in, I want to say the 70s. I'm not quite sure. I don't know, at some point in the 1970s, let's say 1973, because that's when it was published. And so it's about these two aunts who live with their niece because their niece's mum died, and their brother, basically they were kind of like, we'll look after her, it's okay. You're a man, you can't possibly. So he lives by himself. And there is an American soldier who enters the scene. Now, I don't know if I would describe this book as horror, but my God, this was creepy. And it's so exquisitely written. I mean, absolutely brilliant. It's so unnerving and uncomfortable and quite creepy, but in a really subtle, you almost don't notice it. I feel like if you just read it really quickly, you might just be like, it's just about these aunts. And then like, okay, something happens, but like, it's just about these aunts, and it's just like, one of them's a dressmaker. And it's like, nothing interesting is happening until the end. But I feel like there is this undercurrent of just, oh, I don't know. And that's not me saying that. I mean, that's what the book is saying to you. The book is saying, I don't know. Like, what? Something's going on here. Something, all of you are not quite right. Something peculiar is happening. It's all a bit weird. It was just quite unnerving. It depends how you define horror. I wouldn't necessarily define this as horror. There's no gore, there's no body horror or anything like that. Well, there's not really much of that, but it's just quite creepy. I absolutely love this. This is The Dressmaker, Beryl Bainbridge. I absolutely loved it. Cannot recommend it more highly. I just thought it was absolutely fantastic. In stark contrast to the next book that I read. So I'm only going through highlights of the books that I read, but there are quite a few that I just want to tell you about. So the next book that I read was Angel Down by Daniel Kraus. Now, I read this book not because it won the Pulitzer Prize, because that's not really something, I don't really keep up with the Pulitzer. I keep up with it in the sense that I pay attention to who wins. I particularly like the non-fiction winners of the Pulitzer. I find them quite interesting, but quite often the fiction books don't really appeal to me that much, or they certainly haven't the last few years. But I was really intrigued by this, firstly because it's a genre novel, it's a horror novel, and I thought that was really interesting that the Pulitzer jury went for a horror novel. And it's also set during the First World War. And I thought that's interesting. So if you don't know, my PhD is about a First World War poet. It's not a poetry PhD, it's publishing, but it's about that poet. So I have to read a lot of books about the First World War, and I don't have to, but I do read a lot more than I probably need to, that are either written during the war, both about the war and not about the war, written after the war, like just after, and then sort of decades after, that were about the war, and current books as well, and fiction, non-fiction. I will literally watch anything that's set in the First World War. Anytime there's a TV drama on and it's about the First World War, my wife's like, Jen, there's one for you. It's about the war. So I don't think that I am the target audience for Angel Down, because I hated it. Like, what did I give it? Oh wow, I gave it 2 stars. That's generous. That's really generous. I thought it was worse than that. I thought, maybe I should lower that down a bit. So the premise of this book, if you don't know, is that it's American soldiers on the Western Front, and they are sent out into no man's land to assist with what is assumed to be a soldier in pain screaming, because this is going to give away, I mean, it seems odd that it's going to give away their location. Like, the Germans know where they are on the other side of no man's land, but basically it's highlighting, it's giving people a direction to shoot in. Anyway, so they're told to go out and bring back or silence this soldier. Turns out it's not a soldier, and it's actually a fallen angel. So that's the whole premise of the book. What I was hoping for and what the book was are 2 very, very different things. And I always try really, really hard not to review a book based on what it isn't, because I don't think that's fair. Unless the book has been badly marketed, which you get sometimes with books, in which case it's the publisher's fault, not the author's fault. But I always try to kind of review what is there. And if I review kind of what is there in Angel Down, I mean, it's still immensely disappointing. And it is very much in line with kind of what I hoped for and didn't get. So let me clarify this. What I always hope for when I read a book about the First World War is something new, something different, something that isn't entirely derivative, which unfortunately this book is. Books that are set on the Western Front, I mean, there's so many of them. It's unbelievable, like, how many books are set on the Western Front. Like, did you know that it was a world war? And whilst not being fought in all parts of the world, the Eastern Front was a thing. Africa was a thing. Other parts of the Mediterranean, you know. The war happened in lots of different places. So books set on the trenches of the Western Front are in abundance. So when someone does that, what I want is something completely different. Or something incredibly well written. Or something saying something really interesting. Again, I don't think this book was doing any of that. I have read a lot of books written both during and after the war, which were written by soldiers who fought on the Western Front and were in trenches. And some of them are horrific with the things that they are talking about. But the level of violence, I feel like in writing this book, what the author was doing was just like, I just want you to know how gross this was and how terrible and how much violence and how many bodies there were. And it's like, yeah, okay, we get it. There were a lot. But he just keeps talking about it. It's like he makes the point and then he makes the point again and again and again and again. And I guess that the point of the book is that it makes you numb to it, because that's what a lot of soldiers talked about, is that it makes you slightly numb to the violence around you. But unfortunately, it's so over the top, I don't think it makes you numb. It kind of makes it quite comical, and it kind of makes it completely unrealistic. Now, obviously, this is a horror speculative fiction book, so I guess realism doesn't really need to come into it. But when it's based in an actual real timeline of actual reality that happened, it needs to be based on some kind of reality, and it feels like the violence was not. Also, what I would say is that it would be really interesting as a fresh perspective to hear from people who did not see that level of violence, because that is something that always gets forgotten. There are so many soldiers who talked for decades afterwards about how their voices were getting forgotten, because whilst they saw violence, and some of it like the stuff you get in Angel Down, it also wasn't on that scale, and it wasn't that consistent, and it wasn't like that. But everybody wants to focus on the violence and everyone wants to focus on the bodies for some reason. So I don't think that this book was saying anything particularly new, particularly interesting. There were bits of it to do with the angel, which I've kind of heard in other stories, and I've heard aspects of visions. I don't think it was saying anything completely new, and I really did not enjoy it. I really didn't like it as an experience of reading something about the First World War. I feel like if you haven't read a lot of First World War literature, you might enjoy it, which is why I don't think I'm the target audience for this book. But I also don't know anyone who knows anything about First World War literature who has liked this book either. And it's really bizarre. I think it's a horror novel as well. Like, I haven't read horror in a very long time, and I keep thinking I would like to kind of get back into it, but it felt almost like one of those movies, the kind of horror movies that I hate, where it's just like blood and gore, start to finish, with no real depth to that or no real point. It kind of felt a little bit like that as well. Anyway, for some inexplicable reason, I did not DNF it, and I carried on reading it because I thought maybe something interesting is going to happen. I was wrong. Okay, the next book that I read, it's on my shelf actually, let me just grab it. The next book that I read, which I want to tell you about, is A Strange Journey by Maud Cairns. This is a British Library Women Writers series, lovingly embossed. I absolutely love this. And this is a book which, again, genre I wouldn't normally read. I think that was why I picked it for the TBR Read Inspire, of kind of a book that's kind of outside your comfort zone, because I don't tend to read comedies, which it said this was on the back. I didn't find this particularly funny, but I can see how you might label it a comedy. So this is a body swap comedy from the 1930s, where it says the minds of two strangers, Lady Elizabeth and Polly Wilkinson, switch places. What I didn't realise about this book is that they would keep swapping places. I thought it was just, it swapped once and then the rest of the story is about the hilarity of them two having swapped places. But they actually keep swapping. They go back into their normal lives and then they go back to each other again. And that is the bit that I think made this book really, really interesting. I think it has great plot, it has great characters, it has great pace, it has a great story. It's like just everything about this I just really, really enjoyed. I think it had a lot to say about class structures, particularly in the 1930s in England. And it had a lot to say about women's lives, I think, not just about their place sort of within their own class, but their place as women within that class, and their place as women within their families and what their families think of them. And they both learn a lot from each other, and I won't spoil it, but I just think it's a lovely, lovely book. And like I said, I didn't think it was funny, but I can see why you would think it was funny. I really enjoyed this. So that's Strange Journey by Maud Cairns, and I just think it was absolutely wonderful. And I highly, highly recommend this. The next book that I want to tell you about is a book that I absolutely loved. I can't remember why I read this. I mean, I read it because it's a book on my shelf that I wanted to read, but I think it was for the TBR Read Inspire. So was it? No, it wasn't. It was just a book I wanted to read. I'm just having a little look at Storygraph here. I could have kept it for August for a book with an ugly cover, because it has a really ugly cover. It's got a little bit of a rip on the front as well. But this is Bernice Rubin's Mr. Wakefield's Crusade. This, I think, was a book from my book advent calendar. I don't appear to have kept the piece of paper, but I'm pretty sure it was. I'm pretty sure somebody recommended this to me. So I've never read any Bernice Rubin's, but I know that she won the Booker Prize. Am I right in thinking she was the first woman to win the Booker Prize? I might have made that up. But this is about a guy called Mr. Wakefield, who leads quite a boring, ordinary life where nothing very much happens. And he is queuing up in the post office one day when the guy in front of him drops down dead. And the guy was about to post a letter, so he takes the guy's letter. He then becomes completely obsessed with this guy, tries to find out, he reads the letter, and then tries to find out all about this guy's life. Now, this is absolutely insane. It's a very small book. It's completely crazy. This character is wild. I mean, I was not expecting this book to be like this. Okay, when was it actually released? I feel like it was the 80s, I want to say. I'm going to guess 1984. Let's have a look. First published in 1985. so close. This book, I think, has a lot to say about incels because I feel like the main character kind of fits that mold a little bit. So this book has a lot to say, I think, about misogyny, but about men who think they are owed something by society and by women, and the kind of, it's because it's written in the first person perspective, you really get inside his head and you get to hear all of these thoughts that he's having. And then you realise that he's very unreliable because lots of these things are not happening. And there are things that happen in this book where he like arranges to meet people, but he didn't, because he had a pretend phone call with this person who he's never spoken to or spoken to only once. And he's arranging to meet them and then they don't turn up. And then he gets annoyed that they didn't turn up for a meeting, which he made up. Anyway, it's completely crazy. And it's such a brilliant character study of the inside of this man's mind. And it's quite a nice ending. Like, it's quite satisfying. I mean, I just think this book is absolutely brilliant. So that's Bernice Rubin's Mr. Wakefield's Crusade. This cover is terrible, but if you can get hold of a copy, I do believe it's out of print now, but you might be able to get it in a secondhand shop or your library. This is so good. Like, and he does this like little crusade. It's like little trying to he's on like a mission to try and find out how this person died and who they were and what was going on. It's just, and he like really gets involved in their lives. Oh, it's so good. Yeah, I mean, I would happily read that again. I really want a better cover version. I'd like to keep this, but this cover is terrible. Okay, what else did I read? Let's have a little look. Oh, it's up here. Because I mentioned it in another video, I will mention it here. Oh, it's already covered in dust, look at that. I read Satnam Sanghera's Tonight the Music Seems So Loud, The Meaning of George Michael. This is not really a biography of George Michael at all. I've seen some reviews where people say, this is a really disappointing biography and I didn't learn anything. It's not a biography of George Michael. It's kind of about how George Michael, as a singer, is seen as being, on the one hand, supremely famous and very talented and very brilliant, but on the other hand, it's a little bit embarrassing to be a fan of his music because it's just not cool, and it's never been cool. And Satnam Sanghera really goes through all of those reasons why, even when George Michael was incredibly famous, when he was alive, when he was, you know, in Wham, for a lot of reasons, he was not seen as being particularly cool. You didn't listen to his music if you were cool. And a lot of that is to do with his image, his appearance. A lot of that is to do with him being the son of an immigrant, and with Andrew Ridgeley as well, being of the same mould, both being sons of immigrants. And so Satnam Sanghera has a lot to say about that. But it's just, he talks a lot about society and the way that we judge people and the way that we judge men who look a certain way or act a certain way, especially gay men, especially immigrants or sons of immigrants. And I thought that was absolutely fascinating. So a lot of this book is about, yes, it's about George Michael, and it's about a kind of a review of his life. That's not what biography is, I guess. It's a review of his life, of his music, of the way that people have reacted to it. So a lot of this was about the kind of posthumous reactions to George Michael, which is very pertinent to the things that I'm studying. So I found this very interesting. And it's about his personal relationship to George Michael, but why George Michael means so much to him and why he should mean so much to so many of us, and how he really did affect music and change music. And I thought it was an incredibly interesting book. I thought it was it's very moving in places, and I really enjoyed the way that he didn't sugarcoat any of George Michael's life, because I feel like there's a tendency, especially when people have died, to either completely destroy them or to kind of sanitize them in a way and not talk about any of the bad things. And I think he did a really good job of balancing that out. Like, there are some parts of George Michael's life which are really difficult to talk about. And one of the things that I really enjoyed, if enjoy is the right word, but I really appreciated the most, is when he was talking about the last few years of George Michael's life and the fact that he was clearly a drug addict, and people kind of ignored it in the way that people tend to with addicts. And I really appreciated that, the way that he was talking about the way we kind of gloss over those kinds of things and we don't talk about them. And even now, it seems like we shouldn't be talking about this, but why not? You know, we probably should. I just found this a really interesting book. It's a very short book. I probably could have done with a bit of a longer book, a little bit more. But for what it is, I really enjoyed it, and I would highly recommend it, whether you're a fan of George Michael or not. If you're interested in celebrity culture at all and how we kind of put people on pedestals and tear them down again, or how we kind of react to celebrities and what they mean to us. If you're interested in any of those things, I think that this is a really interesting book and very worth reading. The next one I want to talk about has already gone back to the library, and that is The Pretender by Jo Harkin. This I read for the book bingo, and it was a book which has been longlisted for a book prize, or has won a book prize. And this has been longlisted or shortlisted, I forget which, for the Walter Scott Prize. And it was mentioned on Katie's channel, Katie from Books and Things. And as soon as she mentioned it, I thought, oh, this sounds amazing. I really want to read this. So I put a hold on it and got hold of it quite quickly. So this is about a young man whose name is John Cullen. And he lives, he's a very poor young man, and he lives with his also very poor family in England in the, I forgot what century this is saying. One moment. In the 15th century, in 1480. And one day he's visited by someone, and his dad says, oh, you're going to go to do some studying, because you're a clever boy, you're going to go study with this man. And he goes, and then this man says to him, you're not actually John Cullen, you are actually the heir to the English throne. And what happened was, you were taken as a child, and another child was found. And this is technically a true story, but this other child was found, and that child has actually been locked up in the Tower of London, but you are the real heir to the throne. And he's very, very young, so he believes this. And this is actually a true story in the sense that there were pretenders to the throne. There were people who claimed that they were this kind of mysterious heir to the throne, and that the boy in the tower was not the real boy, and that actually that they were the heir. But this book was so good. I mean, I loved this. It was just absolutely wonderful. If you love historical fiction, if you love medieval fiction as well, if you love, it's just so good. So it's written in quite a casual 21st century style. There are lots of F words in this book. The language is not accurate, but then if it was accurate, I think a lot of people wouldn't read it and it would be too difficult to read. But it's very clearly not accurate language, and the way that some of the characters think as well. But I appreciate that so much, because I think this was saying so much about what it's like to trust people and what it's like to believe people, because you want to think that, I guess this character wants to think that there is more to his life than what he has, and that there are more interesting things coming to him. And he doesn't really want the things that he's been given, but he just wants something different. And so it says a lot about trust, and it says a lot about relationships and relationships with our kind of elders, but also our betters in terms of kind of the social order. And it really says a lot about grief and about trauma and about memory and about kind of the idea of whether there is an innate usness underneath all of this kind of things that happen to us that make us kind of the person we are. If there is this thing underneath, this kind of soul of who we really are, and whether that can be lost and whether that can be found again. And I just thought this was an absolutely brilliant book. I love the writing style, even the language that was used, which I wouldn't always like really modern language in a book that is this historical, but I just really appreciated it, and I just really loved it. I just thought it was absolutely a joy to read. And I'm really glad that Katie recommended it, because I wouldn't have picked up otherwise. Big chunky book it was as well. And I read it. I just really enjoyed it so much. I highly recommend it. I've only got a couple more things to tell you about, and then I'm all caught up. But the next thing that I read, also from the library, and it's gone back now, is by Philippe Besson, and it's The Summer Boy. Now, I have read now all 3 novels by Philippe Besson that have been published into English. So he is a French author, and I absolutely love. So Lie With Me, which has been made into a movie, was translated by Molly Ringwald. That I really liked. It's probably like my second favourite Philippe Besson novel that I've read. His first one that I read is In the Absence of Men. Now, rather predictably, it's set during the First World War, so of course I love it. And Proust is a character. And that, I think, is translated by Frank Wynne, if I've remembered correctly. And I love that book. Like, it's so good. And this one is, I've completely forgotten the translator. One moment. Storygraph doesn't tell me. It's Sam. I can't remember. Philippe Besson tends to write autofiction, which is a French way of saying that he doesn't have any imagination. He's always writing about himself. But seriously, the main character is called Philippe Besson. And he is once again writing about being older and seeing someone that you know who reminds you of someone that you knew when you were younger. A lot of his novels are like this. This one is that same thing happens, but it's about a summer where he went to stay with a friend and his friend's family, as they always did every summer, and it's on an island off the coast of France, and he knows lots of people there, but there's a whole group of them, and there are two new people that they meet who are also on holiday there, and something happens to one of them. Now, if this book were longer, I might have enjoyed it. If it had more mystery about what happened, I might have enjoyed it. But as it was, I think I was expecting this book to be a little bit sexier, because all of Philippe Besson's novels are quite sexy and quite gay, and it wasn't really. I mean, there was a bit of sexiness, but it wasn't in the same way that I expect Philippe Besson's novels to be, quite lingering on the sexiness and quite emotional and quite tense. It wasn't really. I thought the characters were really interesting. I'm trying to say nice things about this because I want to, because it's Philippe Besson, but actually I just didn't think it was very good. I thought it was too short. I don't think very much happened. I was just a bit bored, and that makes me very sad. I read this book though in 3 hours because it is very, very short. The font is quite big, the margins are quite big, every chapter is quite short, and there is a lot of white space at the end of every chapter and then a blank page. So despite the fact that it was, let me see how many pages it was, 198 pages. If it hadn't been for all that blank space, it would have at least been 100 pages. So I read it in 3 hours. It felt really good actually to just sit down and read a whole book in one go. I really enjoyed that. Just not this book. I didn't enjoy that. Okay, I have one more book to tell you about. I thought I had it somewhere. It's underneath. It's here. Oh, let me try and get this out. I don't know why I'm doing this, because it's a Persephone book. Could be any book. They look like this. So I read this book for the TBR Read Inspire. Now the prompts for July were to read a book that fits for another reading challenge, read a book that's like a holiday read, I think it was, yeah, a holiday read, or one that's outside your comfort zone. And I thought, well, shall I cheat? Because technically I have a reading challenge to myself to read every book that Persephone have ever published. It's a very long going project, but I will never reach the end of it because they would just keep publishing great books. But I would like to read all of their books. I have my own Storygraph challenge. It's private, but it's got all of their books on. But that was my challenge. So I was like, maybe I could cheat and do that. But then I thought, no, actually, whenever we go away on holiday, which I do very rarely, but when we go away, I always take a Persephone book. So this is a holiday read to me, any Persephone book. But then as soon as I opened it, I realised it is a book outside of my comfort zone, because underneath the title, Tell It to a Stranger, it says stories from the 1940s. It is a book of short stories. It's a very small book of short stories, but I am not a huge fan of short stories, so I don't gravitate towards them. I don't love short stories, so this is very much outside my comfort zone. This is Persephone book number 15, by the way. And let's have a look at those beautiful end papers again. I thought that this book was amazing. I gave it 5 stars. I think it's one of the best short story collections I have ever read. Now, I didn't love every story. I think the last story was actually probably one of my least favourites, and there was one in the middle that I wasn't a huge fan of. They all tend to be about marriage, relationships, children. They all have a certain amount of tension, which is just under the surface, sometimes spoken about, but not quite. And at least a couple of them went over into the outright creepy. Not in a kind of horror way, not in a supernatural way at all, but in a just, I can't describe it in any other way. I can just make noises. Just, I don't know about that. A little bit like that. I just thought this was absolutely amazing. I love it. I'm going to remind you again of the title because it's so tiny, but Tell It to a Stranger by Elizabeth Berridge. If you are looking for a short collection of short stories, all set in the 1940s, this book was, I think, compiled by Persephone, so it wasn't a short story collection that was republished. It was the author's kind of short stories which were published elsewhere that Persephone made into a book. But it was first published by Persephone in the year 2000. So yeah, it was from 2 different selections of short stories that it was compiled, I can't speak now. It was compiled together from books published in 1947 and 1949. So they were written during or in the 40s and published in the 40s as well. And quite a few of them are about war, and they do mention the war in a way that I presume means the Second World War, but it could have been either war, who knows. But this I just thought was absolutely brilliant. The writing is just absolutely chef's kiss. Superb, so subtle, so understated, so exquisite. I just want to read everything that she published. She published a few novels, I think, but mostly short stories, and I just thought this was so good, so good. Such a wonderful way to end July. So that was not at all quick. I thought this was going to be quick. Turns out, unprepared, I had a lot more to say about these books than I thought I was going to have. So I would love to know your thoughts if you have read any of these. Do let me know all of your thoughts in the comments below. I will be back soon with another video. I'm easing myself back into YouTube after having taken my little PhD break, so I don't know when that will be, but until then, let me know all of your thoughts on all of these books. Leave me your favourite emoji that's somehow holiday related. But leave me that in the comments below, and I will see you very soon in another video. Thank you so much for watching. It's really warm in here. I'm going to have more ice.